Hey, producer here. Aisha had an amazing conversation with her friend Lauren Salaun as a guest on her podcast, Amplify. So the tables are turned and Aisha is being interviewed. They dive into so many great topics. Please enjoy this special Part 1 episode with Lauren Salaun.
All right. What's up, everyone? I am so excited for this conversation because it's so many things that I've gone through in 2022. And from what I'm hearing from, friends, people on social media, people from listening to the podcast, all that kind of stuff, that I know that so many people are going to relate to this. So Aisha, I'm so pumped that you are here. This is going to be fun. This is going to be a good one.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad to be here. What I love about like doing podcasts with friends is like, you really can just chat. Like there's not a lot of like get to know, like you can get into like the deep nitty gritty. Cause like,
No, exactly. And it's funny too, because like the prep for this, like very much what you said, like, I'm like, oh, Aisha and I just get to like hang out and chat and talk about stuff for a bit. Like,
and
this
then call it a
so
podcast.
Fun, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I have questions and I have things and like an outline structure, all of that. But I'm also like, oh, it's going to be so good and also so organic, which is so fun. Right. So, okay. But first things first, jumping in with some rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
What are you grateful for right now?
Oh, I'm grateful for right now, finally being at a place where I can hear like my true self, like talking and taking action on that. I feel like I've for so long have lived with just so much chaos in my head that like it's hard to like have like what you need to come through, like sift up through the top. You know, I picture like oil and water, like the separation of like, you just have questions about things, life, and like the answers just boom, pop through. Like I'm finally at a place where those are like happening a lot more frequently. I'm so grateful for that.
Good. I love that. Good. What is a guilty pleasure of yours?
Real Housewives, like the entire franchise, like every city.
Every city. All right.
City.
Is there a favorite? See, that's not a show that I ever really got into. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm actually on a fast right now. I'm on a
specifically
fast.
From Real Housewives?
Yeah. A 21-day fast.
Oh, wow.
I've missed a lot of episodes, but I don't think I have a favorite location. Well, because we're getting into it. So I don't necessarily have a favorite like city, but I do have a favorite like city and like time frame. So there's like tops, right? So like Atlanta had like a star cast with like Nene Leakes, Portia, Phaedra, Cynthia. Like to me, that was a great run. Most recently, like Beverly Hills, like Kathy Hilton, like it's just they have like runs, and then when the new cast switches up, like it's a whole thing. So yeah.
All right. There's a whole
guilty pleasure. Clearly.
There's a whole system and yes, a process. We are invested.
Yeah.
What's a random fact that most people would not know about you?
Oh, only my closest friends know this, and it is that whenever I'm like anxious, in distress, sick, hungover, drunk, you name it, I go into the bathroom and I turn the shower on. I'm not in the shower, actually. I'm just like laying on the floor with my husband calls it my blankie. It's a college blanket that my mom gave me when I was in college. And I just lay down in there. Yeah. And it came from when I was younger, I had really bad asthma. We grew up in a really low income we grew up low income, and I think my mom couldn't afford a humidifier, so she would put me in the shower or in the bathroom to like create that like humid environment to open up my lungs to breathe. So I've just always associated like distress with that, and it's like a soothing thing for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's so tender. Yeah, and like the white noise and it's because if I'm feeling anxious or like in a kind of an anxiety loop, or I can't focus, like ADHD shit is going on. I'm like, oh, right. Like binaural beats or just even white noise type stuff, it's so grounding for me. Or just something like music with a really heavy bass line. So like my bones are shaking. Like, that similar kind of like repetitive kind of white noise. Oh, and that's like little like that's
little
such
me,
an inner child, like little healing moment.
It
for
really
you.
is. And so close people, like, close people don't see that version of you always, right? So like my college roommates knew about it because like obviously we were drunk and I'd go in there. And then so that's my place.
If you weren't doing what you do now, like what kind of job or career would you have? And now with this, like, cause we're creating the reality of our dreams, doing what we want, all that kind of stuff. But like, what's a job or career that, regardless of whether you have any realistic qualifications or capabilities for it, but you've always been like, oh my gosh, this would be so cool. Right. Like, like, I don't know. Like,
yes, I know exactly what I would do. It would be like a twofold job. So this job doesn't quite exist, but like,
that's okay.
I would be this first job exists. It is the person that makes those clever sayings on the highway, like drive hammered, get nailed.
The traffic light slogan maker.
Yes, because sometimes they're clever AF. Like I'm like, dang, I wish I would have thought of that. Like,
yeah, I mean,
they're good.
Well, and that makes sense with being a marketer and like, all of that. I'm like, okay, yeah.
I would
guess
love
that's
to
probably
be
a marketing role.
Or like a meme maker, like a great meme account. Like I would just love to just like.
Okay. See, but now I feel like you kind of like with the work that you do, maybe you're doing less of that now, but you do some of that and you're really good at it.
Yeah. I just wish that I can like just do that. Like funny memes, like memes that have nothing to do with like promoting anyone's business, just like memes. Well, then,
like, I mean, okay. So now I'm like,
what kind?
A coaching session? I'm like, then why not?
So here's the thing. It's like, I would love to do that, but I don't want to do that. I would also love to bird watch,
gotcha.
Right? Like, but I don't want to be hired as a bird watcher. I just love birds. Like, so, it's like something like this would be so fun. Maybe like an internship, like a really nicely paid internship. I would do that for like a season of life.
Okay. All right. I like this. Fun fact. My not so secret, like if you're following me on Instagram, obviously, but my like secret, spicier, sassier meme account that I have. I didn't realize that for like a month it was attached to my personal Facebook page. So that was really fun.
Okay. People are probably like, wow, Lauren.
Yeah, and I went on my Facebook. I was like cleaning up like photos and privacy and doing all that. And I was like, oh, good.
Right. Your aunts are like liking them. Like, oh, well, there we go.
Like, all right. Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Gotcha. Okay. What did you want to be when you were little?
I wanted to be a scientist.
Any kind in particular?
With bugs. And the reason why I remember that is because when I was little, there used to be like lizards like in the grass, and I would literally like, this is so sad. I'd pull them out and then like try to like inspect them. Are you covering your ears?
That's not that sad. No, I was pushing the headphones in further.
Oh. I thought you were going to cover your ears, so I was like, well, I won't say what I would really do, but like I legit would like would
you like perform operations on them?
Yes.
Aisha.
So bad. So I didn't know I had a good heart.
Like today, we discovered that Aisha is a sociopath. Just kidding.
Like I've been killing since the age of 3. And we would release butterflies, and there was these plants, and the butterflies would always come back, like I think they would come back. I don't know. And so I would like grab their wings, but you're not supposed to do that. I didn't know.
Yeah, they'd get the dust on you. Yeah.
I loved the bugs. Anyways, and I remember being in a play, and we had to like, it was like a little like, I don't know, like choreographed dance thing. And you had to go up and say what you dress up, how you wanted to be. And I like full blown scientist, like a white coat with a net catcher to catch the bugs. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can picture it now. There's going to be like a bug meme account. A really clever bug meme account.
Except I want nothing to do with bugs now. Like, no, thank you for that.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Any weird talents or special skills outside of lizard autopsies?
Oh, I think I don't know if this is like a skill. I honestly think my intuition is like unmatched. Like I have solved some of the crazy. I know I'm like really good FBI agent, intuition compiled, all of the things.
Okay. We're going to want examples later when we're out of rapid fire zone. So I just took a note on that. I like it. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. I almost went there. I'm like, no, save it for later. Okay. Last time that you cried.
At what time was therapy today? At 11:30.
Yeah.
Yeah, with my therapist. I just cry,
You know what? Like, I feel like every time I go to my gynecologist, I cry. Like, I'm like, I don't know what this relationship is, but like, she's like, gives me hugs, all the like all that. I'm like, but also like, I think I cried. Did I cry today? I'm surprised that I don't remember if I did. I know I cried yesterday. So,
Yep. I was watching this TikTok where this therapist was saying, like, for those of you that don't believe in astrology, like it's real. And I can tell the person's sign by like how they react in therapy. And I'm a Pisces. And so she was like, Pisces will just cry, but they won't acknowledge it. They'll just keep talking and tears are running down their face. And I was like, oh yeah, that's me.
You're so used to the water. You're used to the water. You like, let it flow. You little fish. Yeah. You little floaty fish with big feelings.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that you were a Pisces.
Yeah.
Because me being a Virgo, like we match very well typically.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Last time you laughed so hard you almost peed your pants.
Oh my gosh. Pee my pants?
Or like maybe,
Okay.
Because really
it gets there sometimes. Honestly, 2 nights ago, my husband was like trying to make me say things fast, and it was like sticky stick statistics, like so we were just going back and forth and like, laughing. Yes, all of that. And I was just, I don't know why it was so it was, like slap happy, you're so tired, you're just like laughing so hard. Yeah.
You're like, now say it with a marshmallow in your mouth. Right? Like what's your favorite meal?
Oh, sushi, rainbow roll, no cucumbers.
Okay, yes. Mm-hmm. Favorite travel, or no, not favorite, next travel destination?
Greece. Mm-hmm.
Yo, you're the girl. You're the third person in the last week that I've interviewed that's like everyone has said Greece.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something going on with Greece, everybody.
Going on with Greece. Yeah, I'm
2023, so it's Greece. Okay. Okay. So you recently launched your own podcast called Butterfly Season, which is fucking incredible. It's so good. It's so good. And I can explain what that means and all that kind of stuff, but I would love for you to share like what the like energy behind that, intention behind that, what that means to you, right? Cocoon season, butterfly season, all that.
So butterfly season really is like the end game or the end goal. But really what we talk about on the podcast is like cocoon season, right? Like the season where you're maybe quiet, slow, reflecting, or just feeling like you're in like a season of undoing. It's painful, tears are involved, like whatever transition you're trying to make, like that is cocoon season. So we really like dig deep in that. Having therapists on different type of healing modalities to like collapse the time on the undoing so that you can live fully in a butterfly season.
Yeah. And yeah, I love that. And like what my audience knows, what right, from conversations we've had, like, and just in the collective as well. Yeah. 2022 for me, for sure. And a lot of others, right? Like 2022 was a major cocoon season. And I feel like we've talked about that where like, I kid you not. And like, I get like why it all happened for me, all that. I'm like, ooh, like the, like sometimes toxic positivity, but also the like self-awareness, understanding how energy works, karma, all that kind of stuff where I'm like, well, I am supposed to go through this for my soul's evolution and fuck this at the same time. And this blows. But yeah, like 2022 was for me, like ego death after dark night of the soul, like piled on top of one another. And then like 5 happened all layered on top of one another in the last week of the year. And the funny thing is, like, you know, my year started with big fucking intensity, traumatic shit and all of that. And after that stuff happened in the beginning of my year, I was like, okay, God, like, I see the lesson in it. I see how, even though this is a first for me, this situation, like, I see how it is the common thread of so many of my wounds and so much of my trauma. I can see how it is here in this situation too. And I was like, I'm done learning lessons the hardest way possible. I'm done like learning the lesson by running fucking 100 miles an hour into the brick wall. Like, okay, I will listen to the nudges. And I know I've said that to you before a few times, but like, I'm for real now. I'm for real now. And then like, I feel like I was like,
oh,
well,
are you?
Yeah.
Let's see. Prove it then.
Exactly. And that's not how the year went. That's not how the year went. And I even like in the last week of the year, like I said, like so much shit happened that I was like, well, you know, I told God I was like done doing things the hardest way possible and learning the lessons the hardest way possible. And he was like, well, it's December 28th. We got a few more days left. Let's go.
Prove it, Lauren.
Hold my beer, right? I was like, bro, like, come on. Yeah. So I would love to hear a bit like because I know for you, right? Like 2022 was a lot of cocoon. And like in one of your podcast episodes too, you're like, oh, I feel like, you know, I spent a whole year doing this is not necessarily how I think you sound, but like, oh, I spent a whole year in cocoon season. It doesn't have to take that long. Also, but like sometimes it does, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes it does take longer than we want it to, and we feel like it should, right?
Yes. And I definitely feel like, and the reason why I said it doesn't have to take that long. I just didn't take action around what needed to be done sooner.
Yeah.
Like I wallowed a ton.
Yes.
I was also like so scared to move in any way that I just kind of didn't move. And like to your point when you said like I don't want to have to experience lessons the extremely hard way, and when I had like traumatic events happen, I could see a through line of like why I'm here. I don't know. I had an idea of my through line. Like I had an idea of what was it that like brought me to this place. And like for context, I ran an agency and it just like was no longer aligned for me. And I literally was like, I'm done. Like fired clients, employees, severance them, like everything literally shut down the day that I decided. And after that, it was like, okay, well, what's next? Like I felt so much relief that I felt bad. But after when the dust settled, I was like, okay, I don't even want to move to the next thing because I know that I have something in me that brought me all the way to this point. And I don't really know quite what it is. And instead of self-exploration, I tried to dream up and create the life that I wanted. But what happens is like you cannot create the life that you want if you don't actually undo everything that led you to that point. Yeah. And so I feel like I tried to skip steps, and that's why it took me so long because nothing felt right. Yeah. Like nothing just felt like, hey, this is the way to move or this is the way to go. Like what I realized the biggest lesson for me was that I am a codependent person. I struggle with codependency. Let me rephrase. I am not a codependent person. I struggle with codependency.
Sometimes. Up until now, sometimes I flirt with codependency.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Same.
Yeah. And so I tried to explore it, but I think that if I would have tried to explore that a lot more deeper, then I could have probably collapsed sometime.
Yeah, I hear that too. Like even just thinking through some of the stuff for me last year, it's like I could have collapsed time around things. Like, yes, some of them needed time and longer time than I would have wanted. Right. And when you like get to that point of you're like, oh, this feels awful. And it's probably gonna feel awful for a while. So I get to just like keep putting one foot in front of the other. Right. And like be tender and gentle with myself. And at some point it won't feel like this. Yeah. But right now it does. And I can't see the end of it, but we're going to trust that there is an end to it. But something for me that like where I could have collapsed time was my like reaching out for support more. Cause with that codependency wound also is the like hyper independence. And it's like, okay, but like, sure. Yeah, of course you can go through everything by yourself and you won't die. And like, would it be a little bit easier or maybe like feel a little bit better if like you had some more support? Right.
It's so crazy because there's so much power in allowing people to support you, but even just saying the trauma or how you feel out loud, because you're like shining a light on like this shadow that maybe you have shame around. And then somebody who has either experienced it or knows how to deal with it can help guide you to somewhere you're trying to figure out on your own faster. It's like actually crazy.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So yes, with collapsing the time by, I think so much of it, not carrying it all by yourself. And exactly what you said, like sometimes one person can be like, say one thing that shifts it for you, right? Being heard and seen can shift things for you.
It is so, it is like, it's sick how crazy, like you can feel like hundreds of pounds of pain and discomfort. And like, I know that this isn't where I'm supposed to be and all of the things. And all someone has to say is, yes, you can. And you're like, oh, I can do the thing. Like I was just talking to a friend the other day at Spin and I was like, yeah, you know, I would love to like fully transition out of consulting. Like it's done really well for me. It does really well for me. I would love to only do the things that like super light me up, like handful of clients, period. And I would love to do Whxte full-time, my fine jewelry line. And I would also love to do podcasting full-time. Like if I can do those two things by the end of this year, full-time, I would be so happy. And my friend goes, you can. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
And the moment I was like, and I sat with that for a week and I was like, wait, I can. Like, I just shift how I talk about things. Like,
why not?
Why
not?
Really?
Right. And sometimes it's literally that simple, you know, or somebody being like, hey, I think you're being a little hard on yourself right now. And then you go, oh, fuck, I am. You know, and you're like, oh, should I?
Right.
It would have been nice to realize that, like, you know, and so, yes. So I would say like, having support system and people you can trust who can give you other perspective, who can support, guide, whatever it is, even just hear you. Right.
And on a more complex level, like I know for anyone listening, that probably sounds like very like not necessarily on the surface, but cinchy or easy, especially if you don't know like the turmoil or like the conflict that was going on in my head about like, how am I going to transition? Right. But like on a more complex level, like I was feeling unmotivated, like previously so excited about things, but it just started to feel unmotivated. And I was like, I just really don't know where it's coming from. Like I literally have the motivation to do nothing. It felt like it could be depression, but I had no reason to be depressed. Like it was just like, I don't have no idea where this is coming from.
Well, and I had a friend, like no reason that you felt like was good enough. Right. Because like to make depression doesn't have to necessarily make sense.
Right. So I'm like, I don't know. This just feels like off. And then I was talking with a friend and she was like, do you feel like you're playing small? And I was like, I guess I have no idea. And then afterwards I brought it to my therapist and she was like, we tied everything together. Like, because I was conditioned in my childhood that like taking risks doesn't mean that it doesn't equate to love. You don't get love if you take risks. So me transitioning is risky, right? Me saying I want to go full time into these new things, even though what I have now is working for me really well. My unmotivation was myself trying to protect myself from taking risks. So it really was a symptom of an old story or an old loop. But if I didn't have that conversation with a friend to spark my thought, then bring it to therapy, then I would have never been able to pull those things together.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes like when it's like, oh, well, everything's good. Like this is all good and it's working. So like I'm stupid for feeling bad or ungrateful or unmotivated or whatever, or not being just content here.
Right.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the shutting down the agency, ending that, because that also with it was like a business divorce, right? Business partnership ending. And in one of your podcast episodes, you talk about how you were at, I think, like a sound bath healing or a yoga class, right? And you you were thinking that you were getting COVID because like you were feeling a lot of like throat chakra blockages and stuff going on. And then it wasn't COVID and you were like, oh no, this is like spiritual awakening shit happening.
Oh my gosh. Literally.
But that you like took action like pretty swiftly.
Yeah. If I have a resume of like skills, like random skills, like one of them is instant action. Like I will typically take instant action. You tell me to do something, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this right now. So I went to a sound bath. I had never done one before. And for context, like at that point, like knew nothing about what chakra points were, like zero.
I love this.
I was just really going to support a friend. She's like, come sit in front. I'm like, okay. And it was still COVID time, but like in Arizona, people were very much like no mask vibe. And I felt that way, but hadn't lived out that way just because I wasn't really out because I didn't need to like leave the house. And so I left the house, like I had a mask in my purse and no one had one on. So I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I hadn't had COVID yet either. So I knew nothing. And this is like 2021. So it's still like very unknown. Or 2020. No, 2021. I was with you 2020 COVID at the mastermind.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So this was 2021. And all of a sudden my throat starts to get really tight and I'm like, oh my God, am I catching COVID? Like right here, right now, this second? Like, is this how it happens? Cause like we had no idea at that time. So after the sound bath, I asked her and she's like, babe, your throat chakra is blocked. I'm like, what the fuck is a throat chakra?
Excuse me.
Yeah. Go in the car. I don't even drive away. I'm like reading because I'm just like, hold up. Like I feel caught up in my throat. Prior to that, I was having hearing issues in January. Like literally, like my ears felt like there was water in them, like they were plugged. And anyways, as I'm going down like the Google rabbit hole, it's like if a side effect of a blocked throat chakra is loss of hearing. And I'm like, holy shit, I've been having hearing issues since January and this is March. And then I'm like, okay, well, Google, how do I unblock a throat chakra? And Google says there's something that you have to say that you haven't said before. And really it was like what started Google told me. It was the start of the end of everything, really. I was just like, I can't do business like this anymore. I'm just like not happy. I'm not fulfilled. Like it's just not working out. But I didn't think that meant to shut down the agency. And then it wasn't until, so that was March, and it wasn't until July where I was like, no, that's what that meant. And then once I like had that like awakening, it was July 5th, I was like, wow, like I can't do this anymore. And literally July 5th told everybody, shut it all down.
Okay. What, and I have some questions like offline.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope, don't worry, everyone.
Yeah.
You know,
the offline version, you have to subscribe for that.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So what was feeling most out of alignment for you with that?
So with codependency, you're like the martyr, and then you also hold a knife to your own neck at the same time. It's like actually crazy. And so you think about it like this. You are in a school project and, you know, when you get assigned random partners, especially in college, you have like no idea who the people are. And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to take this on because I don't trust you guys for my grades.
I fired people in a group project.
Yeah. Yeah. So especially if you like where codependency kicks in is if typically, like, at least for me, something that affects like your well-being or your livelihood. So codependency can show up in relationships of like alcohol abuse, drug abuse, like addictions, just generally. That wasn't in my situation, but just to kind of give you some context where you feel like you're in charge, like your life or livelihood is dependent upon someone else, right? So when it comes to grades for a school project, your grade is dependent upon how well the people do in your school project. And what a codependent person would do is hijack the project and then be upset that the person didn't do anything
Yeah. So I'm going to kick you out of it, but then also be mad at you at the same time for it.
Right. And where the tables turn, especially if the people in the school project weren't going to work anyway, maybe you had some context about the people that you were working with. And so you still hijack because you know that they can't perform, right? Where the tables turn is that the other people in the school project, either consciously or subconsciously, know that if they ebb, you'll flow. So if they don't work, you'll work. If they, like, however they move, they know that now you were once in control by removing, but they now know that they're in control because really you move after they move.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So, another way that it was explained to me really well was like with addiction. So let's just say if you and I are in a relationship and you are an alcoholic. We go out to dinner and I might with friends and I might say, well, let's do lunch because it's not happy hour. So you're not being enticed to drink, right? Like that's me trying to control the situation because I know your behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually you catch on to me doing these subtle things to not get you to drink too much, that you might plan a date on your own with another couple that is at happy hour so that I begin to like try to do other things to control the situation. It's like a weird, vicious like loop of really at its core, not being loved in the way that you should have been loved when you were a child.
Yeah.
And that manifests into picking the wrong partner or choosing the wrong relationships or fostering relationships that aren't conducive for growth, business, loved ones, lovers, right? Like it really bleeds into so much. And I wish I could spell this out more beautifully, but I'm still learning so much more about like codependency and what it is and how it's created. But really at its core, you're sharing a responsibility that's not your responsibility, either by choice or not by choice. And eventually that starts to lead to, in relationships, like an unhealthy balance.
Yeah. And that's actually a lot of what I've been navigating this past year too, with some of my trauma stuff, like since, and generational trauma stuff and everything, is that codependency wound, which is so interesting because part of codependency, right? Like is hyper independence, right? So it's this like, there's this like, waffling between like hyper independence, but also I need you, this job, whatever it is to get my worth from, right? So it's like they seem to be so opposite, but they're very closely connected, right? And so like for me, some of my codependency shit has shown up as like being controlling, right? But then also being people pleasing, and people pleasing is a form of manipulation and control.
Yes.
It's just very passive, right? And very agreeable control, like, oh, because I want people to like me and I'm not going to ruffle feathers and rock the boat, but I'm going to control the situation by XYZ. Right. So yes, that's been so fun today.
And it's actually really crazy to think, because you become so skilled at controlling people in the most subtle of ways, that even if we think about like what I do for business in consulting, or even just in my own business, like creating a brand, building a perception, like understanding imagery and messaging and how that can control somebody and how that can change their decision-making patterns. Like it's actually crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
How is like for me, it really comes, the people pleasing aspect of codependency and all of the things is like, okay, I don't like how this is making me feel. So what can I do to change and control the situation to be like better or however I want it, right? So some of the things, and I'm not sure what wound this is triggering for me or why I do this, but if I'm somewhere with a group of people and I can tell that at least one person in the group doesn't want to be there, like I will go out of my way to control the situation, but to make them feel more comfortable in the situation so that it's no longer awkward.
It's such a fucking mindfuck. And even too, with me being in PR, high, right? Like control, like massaging messages and things like that. It's all about controlling perception. Exactly.
Yeah.
And what do we want to put out into the world? What perception, all that kind of stuff. And yes, right. Like we can do both of our jobs in a very deceptive and manipulative way. Right. And that's not the kind of people that we are. Right. So we don't, but yeah, like
you just understand the power of it.
Exactly. And if I wanted to, like, fuck, I could, like, yeah, I could use these skills for evil too. Just watch yourselves.
Right. And I think that when people think about like manipulation, you always think about it in a bad way. But when you use you can use those skills for marketing and branding and PR and all the stuff for good.
Influence.
Like
it's influence. That's what we call it.
You show a target audience why you should buy this, why it should match with your lifestyle. Like, and you use words that you know would mean something to those people, but because you know, it's just like crazy. Like it's all from trauma. You got this skill from trauma and now look at you making money off of it. Like crazy how life works.
Yeah. Okay. Did you notice once you shut everything down, and I know it's been quite a process of undoing all that and going through all of that and everything. Did you feel though, even like after taking that action and like making that decision, did you feel on some level like more alignment, more expansion? Like, did you feel that like click into place? Even if there was a bunch of shit to wade through and to navigate.
Instantly, I felt relief, but after that, I instantly felt bad for feeling relieved.
Oh, gosh.
Like, which is a whole other thing that I haven't even began to like touch in therapy, honestly.
Well, yeah, it's that like, oh, my desires aren't valid, right?
Yes,
like, I feel good about this, and that makes me a bad person. When it's like, no.
Because the conversations that I would have, even just in my life currently, like instead of saying, hey, why aren't you showing up this way? I'll say, what can we do to get you to show up better? That's me putting the onus all on me as well, but it's not my thing. So like, I already have that struggle of like worth and then the control, the manipulation of, I don't want to make you feel super bad about yourself. So I'm going to say, what can we do to fix this? So that pattern showed up in me feeling instant relief. Like I let go of this huge bag of rocks. But then because my thought is that I'm not worthy enough, that now I'm like, dang, I feel bad that this happened.
Yeah.
So especially because of all of the players that were involved, we had businesses that were like trusting us to take them to market. And we're in the process of that. We had businesses that we were currently working with, like really left them high and dry. Like we closed out with a few companies like that took like a month or so. But employees, I felt super bad for. Like my agency I felt like we put food on their table during COVID. Like when everyone didn't have a job, like we were still able to support
you were killing
them.
it. You were killing it.
And so afterwards I was just like, damn, like I just feel really bad. Like I feel bad that we're just saying, hey, no more, you know? So yeah, instantly I felt relief and then I felt bad. But I also, my mind and my body knew the caliber in which I can play now, that I started to have self-sabotaging dreams that I would like fuck up my whole life over like the craziest things. And like I had a dream that I killed my friend's brother with spaghetti. Like just, and I was like, why am I having like nightmares that something's going to happen to me? I'm going to go to jail for the rest of my life. And after I unpacked it, I was like, oh, like I literally have the cleanest of slates. I know that I can do whatever. And we go back to that risk taking. Risks don't equal love, right? And so my mind is like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure you can do anything? Like all of this is a risk. We don't know. So my mind's like, okay, well, how can we think of every scenario every worst case scenario that can happen to you? So strange how the mind works, but
yeah, I know. And one of the things, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, to answer your question, it's kind of like a yes and a no. Like I kind of felt it and then.
Well, and that's the thing too, sometimes with like following your intuition and making moves that will get you more into alignment, is sometimes it's not going to feel good. And sometimes, but there's, at least for me, generally always a feeling of a knowingness that it's right. Right. Like, I know that this is right and it doesn't feel good. And like, and also too, like, being a human is complicated. Right. And like, having this human experience isn't always like lean. And so I think it's totally normal to be like, oh yeah, I made this decision and it was for my greatest good and it was the right decision. And I still had a whole fucking clusterfuck of thoughts about it and feelings about it. Right. And the dreams and all that kind of stuff. Because when you've been running, and this is something I've actually been coming up against literally this week, because I've done so much work. Like, I feel like 2022 was a year of shadow work and healing, which is amazing. Cause I'm like, I don't even recognize that chick. And, starting 2022, amazing, cool, but like, when you've been operating on specific patterns, like in your cells for the majority of your life, right? And you decide to change them and you heal them and stuff like that. Like, some may happen easily, some changes, some shifts, like you do the healing, you do the work, whatever, like, done, great, and you don't ever revisit it. Others are going to keep trying to come back, and like, your ego is like, wait, no, this is how we've been doing things our whole life, and we do this because it keeps us safe. What the fuck are you doing? You're doing new things and you're making changes and you're doing something different, and change and new means danger, right? So much of the time, that's what our ego thinks. Like, our ego's trying to do what's best for us, but it's like a little child. So it doesn't really know the answers, Right. And so when that stuff happens, like, some of those programs are so deeply ingrained that they will keep coming back up and they'll get triggered by all kinds of different things. And so, like, I've done so much work over the past year on so many things, but a lot of the codependency stuff, like healing, like long-term complex PTSD, like narcissistic abuse, like it was so fun. And part of that too has been shifting to a more secure attachment style as well. Yeah. Like, I tend to be fearful avoidant, which is anxious, but also it's like, like, the way I describe it is like, it'll be anxious for a little window of time and then the person's dead to me. Right. Like, that's how that, like, it's like, it'll be anxious. And then I cross the anxious threshold and I'm boom, like, and I go, I'm like, bye.
You're not going to hurt me anymore.
Dissociated, cut off, compartmentalized. Bye. We'll never think, right? And like, and so that's been coming up a little bit for me this week with a new trigger and stress. So it's like, sometimes, right? Even stuff that you feel like you healed, a stressful situation or something will pop up, and those old programs are like, wait, let us step in to help. And you're like, but you don't.
You're like, no, thank you. You're old, dusty, and expired.
Yeah,
they're exactly. Like, trust us. No.
Like, no.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. It's like the devil you know is better than the one you don't. And even though that's not true, we all feel like that. Like, you're comfortable being uncomfortable, but you don't want to do anything to change because it's not comfortable or it's scary or there's like unknowns. And so I'm just like, I'm in that season too, and setting boundaries and working on codependency. And I literally like told my therapist, I was like, I just feel like it's better to like just kind of like tolerate this than like what could potentially happen if I set a boundary. Because if I set a boundary, I know shit's going to pop off. Yeah. And she's like, okay, well, if you don't set a boundary, like, what is that going to do for your future? And you're just like,
right. It's like, okay, do I want to...
I didn't think that far.
Yeah. It's like, okay, do I want to choose to die a very slow death? Or do I want to rip the fucking Band-Aid off and potentially have things be amazing on the other side?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I feel you on that. It's not easy, but honestly, it's worth it. And especially if you're listening and you feel like you struggle with self-worth, it's like, for me right now, because my codependency issue really boils down to self-worth.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Which I thought meant lack of confidence. And I'm like, I am a very confident person.
Right. When I had my like big, there's a self-worth issue awakening in like 2018, I think it was, I was like, What? I'm
Ew,
so
me?
confident.
No.
I'm so confident. What are you even fucking talking about? I didn't even know what self-worth
I
was.
had no clue. I literally had no clue, but I'm like, you can be a very confident person and have zero self-worth.
Yeah.
And so because it's a self-worth issue, literally it is a conscious decision for me almost every day to figure out how to show up for myself.
What does that look like?
To choose how to show up for myself. And what it's looking like right now in this season is because my self-worth has been attached to performative things, accolades. I'm an Enneagram 3, so very accolade driven, very performance driven. You hang a fucking dangly carrot in front of my face and I will do everything to get it, even if I don't want it. That's like me living in like my toxic personality trait. And so because as a child, I was always rewarded for accolades, rewarded for doing well, rewarded for these things. To me, how I made sense of that was that that equals love. And so there's no, where in a healthy situation, it would be, I love you just because you can get an A or you can get an F. I still love you. You cannot be captain of the cheer team. I still love you. You can be mad at me and angry at me. I still love you. Like that's a more healthier way, right? And for there you realize like, wow, I'm worth a lot. But if your worth is tied to grades or tied to performance, the power is in the grader or the person that's judging whether or not you're good at the performance, meaning the power of your self-worth is in the hands of other people. You have no control over it.
Yeah. Yep. And was that stuff like your worth or love comes when I do XYZ? Well, because I relate to that very, very much, right? Was that modeled for you or communicated in any way?
Here's the communication. I'm going to preface that with like, nothing has meaning. Like everything is meaningless. I'm getting a little bit philosophical, so hear me out. Everything is meaning.
Goodbye, the end of the podcast.
No, done. Sit with that. Nothing has meaning. You just have a set of facts and the meaning that you assign to it. You can assign a toxic meaning or a healthy meaning.
Yeah.
So my set of facts were, I had a mom who told me, I don't know how to love. You have to teach me. My mom didn't show me love. You have to teach me, which my mom was doing the best she can, but red flag. Yeah. That's trauma dumping. She said
she would say those kinds of things?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Well-meaning.
Right.
That's trauma dumping. So she's putting it on me to teach her. I'm a child. I have no idea.
Right.
Me to teach her, but really that's her own trauma that she should have been working on herself. And so that's fact one. Fact two is you have to get good grades. You have to, like, there's no exception.
Right.
And so the meaning that I assigned to all of that was, if I get great grades, then I will be loved.
Yeah. Yeah. Good grades makes mom and dad happy. Bad grades has a conversation where they are not happy. Right. Like good performance.
I could have bad behavior. I could have bad behavior, great grades, and the grades would supersede the behavior.
Yeah.
But so it really was it was a whole performative thing. And like, my mom wasn't really interested in the things that I was interested in. So I loved cheer and dance. She would have much rather me play basketball and do softball. So she didn't really go to cheer competitions or anything like that. So that's fact one. Fact two was, if I performed enough, if I outperformed everyone, eventually parents would tell my mom how good I was, and then my mom would give me praise. That's where the praise would come. So my the meaning that I made sense to that was, I need to be the very best. I need to outperform everyone.
So this gets back to mom, and she's happy.
Mom's exactly. And then I'm loved.
Oof. Yeah.
I know.
Yep. Can resonate with that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't communicated. Like, if you do great grades, I love you. I just made meaning of facts that kind of led to that.
Right. And as little kids, right, we pay attention to, we're very aware of stuff, and you pay attention to how your behavior and the stuff that you're doing, like the effect that has on the people
Right.
around you. Oh, when I
Right.
don't do well, I get screamed at.
Mhm.
Okay, I have to do things perfectly. Right.
Right.
And like not even getting celebrated for doing things well, but like that's the expectation too. Like it's not even like oh, great job. It's like, oh, good.
Literally.
The end. The end.
Literally. Like, yeah, it's super crazy. Like even when you think about it, like I thought this was the cutest thing. Like me and my cousins would like bring our report cards to like family gatherings and like walk around to all of our uncles and aunts and show them to get money for like all of our great grades. I'm like, I'm just fucking reinforcing great grades equals love. Like great grades, great performance equals love. Like it's just like that's not cute. We're really fucking up her self-worth right now, you guys.
And like the interesting thing is that like, yes, right? Like doing well in things, should be celebrated and should have a positive response. And so like even thinking about like one day having kids, it's like, okay, so how do we reinforce that stuff, like good performance and like, because that is
also
good,
just like
right?
unconditional love.
But then, but then also like, I think it's how you speak and then the like emotional response that parents have too when things aren't like don't go well, right? And like
it's really hard. It is hard. And it's the outlier is that you don't have control over the meaning that someone assigns to this set of facts, you know?
Exactly.
You just don't.
And one of the biggest like kind of mind fucks, I guess, like and this isn't because like obviously everyone's brain, every human is different, right? There is no you, there's no me, there is no one else who's operating with the same stuff in my brain as there is you, right? Like we're all very different.
Right.
And like I've known that for a long time, but even just like a month or two ago, I was like, wait a second, like happy for me doesn't mean the same thing as happy to anyone else. Like, we have similarities and overlap, and there's like societal, cultural, whatever, like understandings of like what that means. But like how it feels and looks for me is only unique to me. And I will never know what that emotion or any other, right, feels like to any other person. And I was like, oh shit. So when you say like nothing means anything, like even just think about that. Like everyone's operating from their own very unique set of beliefs, very unique set of life experiences, their own interpretations, meanings, all that kind of stuff. Like we literally do not have the same like thoughts, feelings, beliefs about anything as anyone else.
No. And like getting really philosophical, the only things that I guess have like perceived meaning is the collective. If a collective can feel one way about something, then we can all agree that meaning is the same, but really it's just like what the more dominant thought process is.
Yeah. And even within that, there's so much nuance. Right?
Yeah.
Whew. So fun.
We're getting real philosophical here. So, we're in our philosophical bag.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, let's get really deep and like existential today.